The alarm shrieked through the medical bay of the Intergalactic Research Vessel Qorvis, sending Chief Medical Officer Nix sprinting down the corridor. His 6 limbs moving in perfect coordination as droplets of blue liquid began appearing on the forearms of the unconscious human strapped to the examination table. "Containment breach, possible pathogenic emission," Nix shouted into his communicator as he pulled on a biohazard suit. The protective film sealed instantly around his gray-scaled body, the transparent face shield allowing his 4 yellow eyes to examine the situation, while his 3-fingered hands quickly activated the quarantine protocols. Zachary Forrest had been rescued from his damaged spacecraft just 6 hours ago, floating unconscious in the debris field near the Centauri Gateway. The human's vital signs had been stable until now. The strange, clear liquid seeping from his skin sent the medical team into full crisis mode. "Doctor, the human's internal temperature is rising rapidly," reported medical technician Vereen, her voice trembling slightly as she monitored the readings. "It's approaching what should be fatal levels for carbon-based life forms." "That confirms it," Nix said grimly, adjusting the settings on a containment field that now surrounded the human's bed. "We're dealing with a severe pathological response. The fluid excretion is likely a symptom of internal organ failure." Captain Lorix entered the quarantine area, her tall, willowy form covered in protective gear. "Report, Doctor. Is this human contagious? Should we jettison?" "Unknown, Captain," Nix replied, drawing a sample of the clear liquid from the human's arm. "This excretion is unlike anything in our database. We need to analyze it before determining the risk level." The liquid had now appeared across most of the human's body, beading on his forehead and neck in particular. The medical monitors continued to show rising body temperature. "I've never seen a disease progression this rapid," muttered Vereen, adjusting the scanner settings. "According to our xenobiology database, humans operate at approximately 37 degrees Celsius internally. He's approaching 39 now." Nix moved quickly to prepare emergency cooling measures. In most species across the galaxy, such rapid temperature increases indicated catastrophic infection. The fluid secretion was particularly alarming. Most civilized species had evolved beyond such primitive responses to illness. The Qorvis crew had encountered over 200 sentient species in their explorations, but humans were relatively unknown, having only recently developed interstellar travel capability. "Should we administer broad-spectrum antibiotics?" asked Junior Medical Officer Plex, hovering anxiously by the medication dispensary. "Not yet," Nix cautioned, studying the readings. "We don't know enough about human physiology to risk it. The wrong treatment could accelerate whatever's happening." The human stirred on the table, his eyes fluttering open. The crew tensed, ready for aggressive or disoriented behavior that often accompanied high fevers. Instead, Zachary Forrest simply blinked at them and asked in a surprisingly calm voice, "Where am I? And why is it so hot in here?" Nix approached cautiously. "You are aboard the medical bay of the Intergalactic Research Vessel Qorvis. We found your damaged ship and brought you aboard for treatment. You appear to be experiencing a severe medical crisis." The human frowned, then looked down at his arms, noticing the moisture. "Medical crisis? I'm just sweating. Could you turn down the temperature in here?" "Sweating," Nix repeated, the translation device struggling momentarily with the unfamiliar term. "Yeah, sweating. It's how humans cool down when we get too hot." Zachary attempted to sit up but found himself restrained by the medical table's safety protocols. "Look, I'm fine, just overheated." The medical team exchanged confused glances. Nix approached the human again, scanner in hand. "You're saying this fluid emission is normal, a cooling mechanism?" "Exactly," Zachary nodded. "Our bodies produce sweat when we're hot. The moisture evaporates from our skin and cools us down, basic thermoregulation." Captain Lorix stepped forward. "Our ship is maintained at the galactic standard comfort range of 28 to 30 degrees Celsius. Is this unsuitable for humans?" It's a bit warm for us, Zachary explained. We typically prefer around 21 to 24 degrees, but it's not dangerous, I'm just sweating to compensate. Nix was already reviewing the xenobiology database, finding only sparse information on humans. There's nothing here about this sweating mechanism, he said, fascination replacing concern in his voice. You mean to tell me that your species intentionally secretes body fluids as a cooling method? Well, not intentionally, it's automatic, Zachary clarified. Our bodies do it without conscious control. It's completely normal. The medical team began relaxing their emergency posture, though the containment field remained active as a precaution. Fascinating, Nix murmured, analyzing the sample he'd taken. Simple salt water with trace proteins and lipids, a remarkably primitive but effective cooling system. Zachary shifted uncomfortably on the table. Look, I appreciate the medical concern, but could you maybe loosen these restraints and lower the temperature? And I'm pretty thirsty, sweating depletes our fluids. Captain Lorix gave a slight nod to Nix, who cautiously deactivated the restraints while Varian adjusted the environmental controls for the quarantine chamber. We'll provide appropriate hydration, Nix assured him. But I must ask, if this sweating is normal, what actual symptoms would indicate illness in a human? Zachary sat up slowly, accepting a container of water from Plex. Well, excessive sweating can be a sign of fever or infection, but you'd need to look for other symptoms too, like extreme fatigue, pain, respiratory distress, or unusual coloration. How do you differentiate between normal cooling perspiration and pathological sweating? Varian asked, clearly intrigued. Context matters, Zachary explained, taking another drink. If I'm hot or exercising, sweating is expected. If I'm in a cool environment and still sweating profusely, that might indicate illness. The cooler air was now circulating through the chamber, and the medical team observed with fascination as the human's perspiration began to diminish. The temperature readings from his body also started to normalize. Remarkable, Nix commented, taking continuous readings. Your body's response time to environmental changes is quite efficient despite its primitive nature. Zachary gave a short laugh. Thanks, I think. So you folks don't sweat at all? Certainly not, Captain Lorix replied, slightly offended at the suggestion. Most advanced species regulate temperature through more sophisticated means, internal biological systems, or technological assistance. The only species in our database that secrete fluids externally do so as defense mechanisms or waste elimination, Nix added. Never for temperature regulation. Zachary shrugged. Well, humans evolved on a planet with widely varying temperatures. Sweating let our ancestors hunt during the hottest parts of the day when other predators had to rest in shade. This sparked intense interest from the medical team, who began discussing the evolutionary implications among themselves. Nix, however, remained focused on his patient. I should examine your injuries from the spacecraft damage, he said, moving a scanner over Zachary's body. You sustained minor trauma to your left side and possible concussion. That explains the headache, Zachary winced. What happened to my ship? Captain Lorix stepped forward. It was severely damaged when we found it. The life support systems were failing, which is why we brought you aboard. We're currently analyzing the wreckage to determine the cause. Nix finished his scan. You have 2 fractured ribs and mild cerebral swelling consistent with concussion. Nothing our medical technology can address, but you'll need rest. Great, thanks, Zachary replied, then suddenly looked alarmed. Wait, did you recover anything else from my ship? There was crucial research data in the main computer core. Our salvage team is still working, Captain Lorix said. I'll inquire about the status of your data. As Captain Lorix stepped away to communicate with the salvage team, Nix administered treatment for Zachary's injuries, a regenerative field for the ribs, and a neural stabilizer for the concussion. This will accelerate healing, Nix explained. Though I must admit, our knowledge of human medical treatment is limited. Your species isn't well represented in our database. We're relatively new to deep space, Zachary acknowledged. The Centauri mission was one of our first attempts at establishing research outposts beyond our solar system. Over the next few hours, as Zachary's conditions stabilized, the medical team's initial alarm transformed into scientific curiosity. They conducted a series of non-invasive tests to better understand human thermoregulation, with Zachary's bemused permission. "So you're saying humans can produce this sweat in varying amounts depending on the temperature?" Varian asked, recording the results of a thermal imaging scan. "Yes, and based on activity level too," Zachary explained. "If I were to exercise vigorously, I'd sweat more than just sitting in a warm room." "Fascinating inefficiency," muttered Plex. "To lose valuable body water as a cooling mechanism seems wasteful." "Maybe," Zachary conceded, "but it works pretty well for us. We can endure heat stress better than many mammals on Earth because of it." Captain Lorix returned to the medical bay with news. "We've recovered your research data, Mr. Forrest. It appears intact, though our systems can't interpret much of it due to compatibility issues." Relief washed over Zachary's face. "That's excellent news. That data represents 2 years of xenobotanical research on potentially medicinal plant species. It would have been devastating to lose it." "Xenobotany?" Nix perked up. "You're a researcher, botanical pharmacologist," Zachary clarified. "I study plant compounds for potential medical applications." The Centauri outpost was established to study several promising species that don't exist in our home system. This revelation shifted the dynamic in the medical bay. Over the next day, as Zachary recovered from his injuries, the initial medical emergency evolved into a cultural and scientific exchange. The Qorvis crew was fascinated by humans' unusual biological adaptations, while Zachary was equally intrigued by the advanced medical technology of his rescuers. 5 days after his rescue, Zachary was deemed fully recovered and given quarters outside the medical bay. Captain Lorix arranged a formal meeting to discuss his future arrangements. "Our analysis of your vessel indicates the propulsion system suffered a catastrophic failure," she explained in the ship's conference room. "The damage is beyond repair with our available resources." Zachary nodded solemnly. "I suspected as much. I'm grateful you found me when you did." "We are scheduled to rendezvous with a human outpost near the Proxima system in approximately 14 standard days," Captain Lorix continued. "We can transport you there. In the meantime, Dr. Nix has requested your assistance in updating our medical database regarding human physiology." "I'd be happy to help," Zachary replied. "And perhaps I could learn from your medical expertise as well. Some of your regenerative techniques could have applications for my research." And so began an unexpected collaboration. Zachary worked with the medical team daily, explaining the intricacies of human biology while also learning about the diverse species the Qorvis crew had encountered in their explorations. One morning, Nix summoned Zachary to the medical bay with unusual urgency. "We've received a distress signal from a nearby planet, Tarasi Roman 4. There's a research outpost there requesting emergency medical assistance." "What's the situation?" Zachary asked, following Nix through the corridors. The details are vague communication difficulties. But they mentioned multiple casualties suffering from extreme heat stress. Given our recent education about human thermoregulation, Captain Lorix thought your insight might be valuable. The Qorvis arrived at Tarasi Roman 4 within hours, a harsh desert world with 2 suns and surface temperatures routinely exceeding 45 degrees Celsius. The research outpost was a joint operation between humans and Viridians, a reptilian species known for their geological expertise. As the medical team prepared to shuttle down to the surface, Nix briefed them on the situation. The outpost's environmental control systems failed 3 days ago. They've established a makeshift shelter in a subsurface cavern, but several researchers, both human and Viridian, are suffering from heat-related illnesses. The humans will be sweating profusely, Zachary explained to the team. But unlike our first encounter, this is a situation where the sweating isn't keeping up with the heat stress. They'll need rapid cooling and fluid replacement. And the Viridians? Asked Verine. They don't perspire, Nix explained. Their thermoregulation relies on behavioral adaptation, seeking cooler environments. They're likely suffering cellular damage from the heat exposure. Equipped with cooling technology and medical supplies, the team descended to the planet's surface. The temperature hit them like a physical force as they exited the shuttle, even through their protective suits. The research outpost was built into a cliff face, offering some protection from the dual suns. Inside, they found 20 researchers, 8 humans and 12 Viridians crowded into the coolest chamber they could find. The humans were indeed drenched in sweat, some barely conscious, while the Viridians lay lethargic, their normally vibrant scales dull and flaking. "Thank the stars you've come," greeted the outpost director, a Viridian named Sark. "We've lost all environmental controls. The humans started leaking fluids almost immediately. We thought it was part of the heat sickness at first." Nix and Zachary exchanged knowing glances before getting to work. The medical team quickly established a triage system, identifying the most critical cases. The humans are severely dehydrated despite their perspiration, or rather, because of it, Zachary explained to Nix as they worked. They've been sweating continuously for days without adequate water replacement. The Viridians are experiencing different complications, Nix observed. Their cellular structures are breaking down from the sustained heat. They need immediate temperature reduction and metabolic stabilization. For the next 12 hours, the medical team worked tirelessly. Zachary proved invaluable, helping Nix understand the nuances of human heat stress that weren't documented in their databases. "See how this patient's sweating has actually stopped." Zachary pointed out to Verine as they treated a particularly critical human researcher. "That's a dangerous sign. It means the body has depleted its water reserves to the point where sweating isn't possible. Without that cooling mechanism, body temperature rises rapidly." "So the absence of the fluid is worse than its presence," Verine noted, adjusting the treatment protocol. "Exactly. In this case, we need to cool them externally while rehydrating intravenously." Meanwhile, Nix focused on the Viridians, applying specialized treatments to repair their heat-damaged tissues. The contrast between the species' responses to heat stress provided a vivid illustration of different evolutionary paths. By the time reinforcements arrived with replacement environmental control systems, all the researchers were stabilized. As the outpost began to cool to habitable temperatures, Director Sark approached the medical team. "We owe you our lives," he said solemnly. "Particularly you, Dr. Forrest. Your understanding of human physiology was crucial." Zachary smiled tiredly. "I'm not actually a medical doctor. I study plants, but I'm glad I could help." "A fortunate coincidence that you were aboard the Qorvis," Sark remarked. "Not coincidence," Nix interjected. "Had we not rescued Mr. Forrest days ago, we would have lacked critical information about human thermoregulation. Our standard protocols might have been insufficient for treating the human researchers." Back aboard the Qorvis, Captain Lorix called a meeting to debrief the medical team. "Your performance was exemplary," she commended them. "The outpost will be fully operational again within days with no loss of life. The success is largely due to our improved understanding of human biology," Nix acknowledged, nodding toward Zachary. "What we initially mistook for a pathological condition proved to be a valuable adaptation. It seems our fortuitous encounter has benefited both parties," Captain Lorix observed. "Which brings me to a proposal, Mr. Forrest. Our mission includes cataloging biological diversity across this sector. Your expertise in xenobotany, combined with your unique perspective on biological adaptations, would be valuable to our research team." Zachary looked surprised. "Are you offering me a position aboard the Qorvis?" "A temporary research fellowship," Lorix clarified. We could transport you to your Proxima outpost as planned, or you could join us for the remainder of our survey mission, approximately 6 standard months. We would then ensure your return to human space with all your research intact. The offer was unexpected but intriguing. Zachary considered the incredible opportunity to study plant species across multiple star systems, far beyond what the human exploration program could currently reach. "I'd be honored to accept," he finally said. "Though I should warn you, humans have other biological quirks that might surprise your medical team." "Such as?" Nix asked, already anticipating new entries for the medical database. "Well, for one thing, we regularly become unconscious for about 8 hours out of every 24. We call it sleep. Unconscious, regularly." Varian looked alarmed. "Is it a form of hibernation?" "Not exactly," Zachary laughed. "But that's a whole other conversation." In the weeks that followed, Zachary became an integral part of the Qorvis research team. His initial medical emergency had evolved into a mutually beneficial cultural exchange, with the ship's medical database expanding significantly to include detailed information on human physiology. Nix developed a particular interest in human adaptations, often engaging Zachary in long discussions about evolutionary biology. "Your species' approach to thermoregulation may seem primitive compared to internally regulated systems," he admitted one day in the research lab, "but its effectiveness in variable environments cannot be denied." "Sometimes the simple solutions are the most versatile," Zachary replied. "Sweating doesn't require complex biological systems, just water, salt, and pores." "Indeed. Though I must admit, I'm still uncomfortable with the concept of intentionally secreting internal fluids to the exterior." "You get used to it," Zachary grinned. The Qorvis continued its mission, visiting 7 more planetary systems over the following months. Zachary's expertise proved valuable on multiple occasions, particularly when they discovered several previously unknown plant species with potential medicinal properties. 4 months into his stay, the ship encountered another emergency situation, this time aboard a Terrillian mining vessel that had suffered life support failures. The miners, insectoid beings adapted to cool environments, were overheating in their disabled ship. As part of the emergency response team, Zachary found himself explaining human thermoregulation to the Terrillian captain. "We secrete fluid that evaporates to cool us," he said, demonstrating by wiping his forehead in the warm environment. The Terrillian's antennae twitched in disgust. "Leaking body fluids intentionally? How unsanitary." "Perhaps," Nix interjected, "but effective enough that his species can survive temperature ranges that would incapacitate yours. Different evolutionary paths lead to different solutions." This incident highlighted how much the Qorvis crew's perspective had changed since Zachary's arrival. What had initially seemed like a disgusting symptom of disease was now recognized as a fascinating adaptation. When the Qorvis finally approached human space 6 months later, Zachary had compiled an impressive research portfolio, samples and data from dozens of alien plant species with potential medical applications, enough work to advance his field by years. Captain Lorix organized a formal farewell gathering before they reached the human outpost at Proxima Centauri. "Your presence among our crew has been enlightening," she told Zachary. "Not merely for the scientific exchange, but for the reminder that different biological approaches can be equally valid." "I've learned just as much from all of you," Zachary replied sincerely. "Your medical technology alone has given me insights that will benefit human medicine for years to come." Nix approached with a data crystal. "We've prepared this for your medical authorities, a complete analysis of human physiology from our perspective, including thermal regulation. We've also included treatment protocols optimized for humans based on our research." "Thank you," Zachary said, accepting the crystal. "This will be invaluable." "There is one more matter," Captain Lorix added. the Galactic Council of Sciences has expressed interest in establishing a more formal exchange program between our medical communities. They were particularly impressed by our report on how your perspiration insight helped save the researchers on Tarasi Roman 4. I'd be happy to help establish such a program, Zachary offered. Excellent. The Council has already approved funding for a joint research facility at the Proxima outpost. Dr. Nix has volunteered to remain there as our liaison for 1 standard year. Nix's 4 eyes blinked in synchronization. I've developed something of a specialty in human physiology now. It seems logical to continue this work. Besides, he added with what Zachary had come to recognize as the Zeribian equivalent of a smile, I'm curious about this sleep phenomenon you mentioned. 8 hours of regular unconsciousness sounds medically concerning. Zachary laughed. Wait until I tell you about sneezing. The Qorvis docked at the Proxima Centauri outpost the following day. As Zachary prepared to disembark with his research materials, he reflected on how a simple misunderstanding about sweat had led to this unexpected opportunity not just for his career, but for broader interspecies cooperation. In the docking bay, the medical team gathered to say their final goodbyes. Varine handed him a small device. A personal environmental regulator, she explained. It will ensure you never sweat unnecessarily again. That's thoughtful, Zachary said, but I think I'll save it for formal occasions. Sweating is part of being human. It's not always comfortable, but it connects us to our evolutionary history. A sentiment I've come to appreciate, Nix acknowledged. What initially appeared as biological inefficiency revealed itself as elegant adaptation. It reminds us that evolution finds many paths to survival. As Zachary stepped onto the human outpost, he carried not just groundbreaking botanical research, but the foundation for a new chapter in interspecies medical cooperation. What had begun as a medical emergency, alien doctors mistaking normal human perspiration for a disease symptom, had blossomed into mutual understanding and respect. 6 months later, the Joint Xenophysiology Research Center opened at Proxima Centauri. Zachary served as the human co-director alongside Nix, who had become the foremost non-human expert on human biology in the known galaxy. Their first published paper, titled Comparative Thermoregulation Strategies Across Sentient Species, featured human sweating as a case study in how biological functions can be misinterpreted across species boundaries. The paper became required reading for medical practitioners throughout Galactic Council space. In the center's main laboratory, a framed display held a simple item: the sample vial containing the first sweat Nix had collected from Zachary aboard the Qorvis, labeled in both human and Zeribian script. Not a symptom, but a solution. The misunderstanding that had nearly resulted in Zachary being placed in permanent quarantine had ultimately led to one of the most productive interspecies collaborations in recent history. As research teams of mixed species worked together in the facility, occasional beads of sweat on human brows no longer caused alarm. They were simply accepted as another fascinating example of how life had found countless ways to thrive across the stars. And whenever visiting alien medical students expressed disgust at the concept of perspiration, Nix would calmly remind them, what appears primitive may be elegant in its simplicity. The universe has much to teach us about adaptation if we're willing to look beyond our preconceptions. For Zachary, that unexpected encounter had transformed his career and opened up research opportunities he could never have imagined. More importantly, it had helped bridge the gap between species whose biological differences might otherwise have kept them apart. As he watched human and alien researchers working side by side in the new facility, he reflected that sometimes the most significant breakthroughs came not from sophisticated technology, but from simple understanding, even if that understanding began with something as basic as sweat.